All right, got to address some things first with your group, eh? Let's, number one thing we need to address first is some spirit codependence that are going on here with the group that we need to address. So before we can really continue with the discussion, I'd like to address that. Do you know what I mean by spirit codependence? In other words, there's things that you want from spirits, and then there's things that they want from you, and many of you are completely happy engaging in this sort of constant codependence with them. But unfortunately, you don't understand the full consequences of that decision, because your beliefs matter. Right, so what are your beliefs about you and your self-determining, how you feel your life is self-determined? Do you understand the question?
Yeah.
You're allowed to say you don't understand the question. Michael?
The decisions I make are all mine.
Okay, so decisions I make are all mine.
Do you mind repeating the question, please?
What's your belief about the decisions you make?
That they're right.
Decisions I make are right. Or you could say, another older way to say it is righteous. Of course, most of the time we're really saying they are right for
me.
For me. I'll put that in red because that's not a good thing. Okay, what else?
Spirit influence? The life I'm living now is the result of the decisions I've made in the past.
Do most of us believe that? I think a lot of people don't believe that. I think most people believe that the life they have now is all because of the bad decisions other people made. Is that true? I think for the most part we believe any decision I make is all good, all ends up good. Any decision I let other people be involved in, well, now we've got problems, one way or the other. This is why relationships are often difficult, right, for people, because it's sort of like two people making decisions, and most people, to make that work, most people feel compromise is the only way to make that work. Yeah. Not true, of course. Yes, I don't know if I agree with that. Okay. So
Just
keep
about,
up.
yeah, keep your hand up.
And then over this side, if you keep your hand up, so that's it. Who's got the mic? Yes. Yep.
No matter what decision I make, it's going to turn out badly.
Okay, some people really believe that. So basically, it's the opposite of the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
So I always felt that I had control over my life as an adult, which I don't. So much.
Right, I have total control over my own life. I have total control. Of course, you do have total control over your over your life in a real sense, but most people don't realise how much control they give up to others, because the majority of people give up huge amounts of control to others. Yeah.
Or they like fear control their life.
Okay.
And call that being in
Let's
control.
go there on this side, and do we have the hand up over here?
Both of you did.
Yeah, so let's go across there. Whoever had the hand up first.
And then come across.
I feel like my decisions are usually based on other people's influence over me.
Okay, so can we say I am often influenced? But when we say that, most of the time we think we're only influenced by people we can see.
Yes.
And most of the time when we have thoughts that are passed to us from spirits, we think they're my thoughts, and therefore they're my decisions. And often they're nowhere near your decisions.
Decisions I make in harmony with love will lead to pain.
Will be
Lead to pain.
lead to pain, yes. So you can say loving decisions, so that's corrupt faith, isn't it? Loving decisions lead to pain.
And then if you just pass across the line next to you, you can just say it.
Yeah.
Most of the decisions I think I'm making are right, but then I'm always like, well, I guess we'll see. Let's hope it's right. I don't know.
Can we say then, I hope they're right?
Right, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, so we often hope, which I'll put in quotations, rather than know.
Sort of like close your eyes and
Yeah.
It's like pick the tail on the donkey.
That's right.
Hopefully that's where it goes. Yeah, so.
I wish somebody else made it for me and posted it.
Very important, very important.
it is. Because a lot of us want that, don't they?
So I've run out of space now, so I'm just going to flip the board and I'll flip it back and forward. So I wish somebody would help me. Yep. That's a big thing. Yep.
I make decisions to make other people happy.
Okay.
For myself.
I'll just say decisions to make others happy. Yep.
I won't even make a decision.
Judith, need my
Oh,
phone.
sorry.
You're not having it now. Where are we? Yep.
That my decisions will help me get away from pain.
So making decisions to avoid pain,
Yeah.
with the goal to avoid pain.
Yeah, or I believe that my decisions are going to help me get away from pain.
Okay. In the pain you already have, or pain that you might have?
Might have and already.
All right, both. Okay. So to avoid pain. You could also say it another way, couldn't you? So I make decisions to get comfort. Yeah, it's the same thing really, isn't it? Yep. We come down the front here now, and then
And here.
who on this side?
Yep.
Where are we?
Here, just here, right, with the mic runner.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right.
I make decisions out of habitual pattern or ruts in autopilot.
So
Sort of like, because it's familiar, I make the same decisions. I sort of go by the.
I guess I'm not in the moment making the decision at the moment. I'm bringing
by
it
habit, can we call it?
Habits.
By habit. Yep.
In autopilot, we could call it, couldn't we?
Decisions from habit. Mary wants to call it autopilot. In other words, a machine makes a decision for me. Many of you let your phones make the decision for you. Don't you? Like driving along the car, phone says turn left, you turn left. Actually, that was right, then I just did it anyway. Mary and I have right and left issues.
I would like someone to help me with my big decisions in life.
Yeah, so it's very important, isn't it? We want help, and often because we're really worried about the consequence of the decision, and so we want some reassurance that somebody else already knows what's the best thing to do, and somehow that's going to play out well for my life. Finding out what they want. Now, of course, historically for many of us that's worked. Because like, if you're going to build a house, you want to talk to someone who knows how to build one, right? You don't want to, oftentimes if you start building a house and you've got no idea how to build a house, and you tried to build one, if you didn't know you needed a foundation and you didn't know building codes and standards to keep it up and you didn't know engineering, then obviously you'd be in trouble. So there are certain areas where you do need expert advice So should we also say, other than somebody helping me, let's say I'm seeking expert advice. Should we say that? Because because that is also a wise thing to do, isn't it?
Depends on who the expert is.
It depends whether the expert is a self-professed expert or an actual expert, of course. And of course it also depends on the level of expertise. See, on Earth there's a basic feeling, isn't there, that if you're educated, then it means you're an expert. But oftentimes we've been educated in completely the opposite way that God would do something. And so we're really only an expert if we do it the way God would do it, because that would make us an expert. But for the majority of us, we're looking only at humans and going, they seem to have everything together, they seem to understand their life, so I'll go and ask them. And a lot of times, they can also just feel they know better, and you think they know better, because they think they know better. Right, so that's very common. Yep.
Well, I make a decision because I have to.
Microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Always one.
I make a decision because I have to.
Okay.
Life happens.
Yeah.
I'm forced into it.
I'm forced into it. Yeah. Judith? Just down here.
Like I don't even want to make the decision,
I don't want to.
So I avoid
or
decisions.
just avoid making it.
Can you see we've got so many, we could keep going, couldn't we? Yeah, there's so many. So we've already filled up, like, both sides of the board, right? Okay. And we could keep going for the rest of the day, couldn't we? Now, I just want to point out, though, what some of these attitudes do, because these are fundamental beliefs that you have about decisions, aren't they? So you could say, if my beliefs matter, and these are my beliefs, you can see a lot of my beliefs are almost the opposite beliefs as well. Like one time we're saying we do it this way, and then another time we're saying we're going to do it the opposite way almost. So a lot of our beliefs, and this is a problem many of us have, is a lot of our beliefs are even contrary to themselves, and we don't even know it. We don't even see or assess that they're contrary. We don't even see the illogical nature of our own beliefs frequently. And so you can see that my sense of logic is going to be severely limited when I can't see that two beliefs are almost opposing each other. It's like people believing that love is good and at the same time saying love hurts. So, you know, we get all these songs, don't we, saying love is good, and then we get all these songs saying love hurts. And many of us have the same two beliefs inside of ourselves about love, that it's good but it hurts. It's like, so how is that good? And so we don't see the contrary nature of the belief, and therefore we don't see how it's causing us to be very illogical in our decision-making processes. Now, the reason, though, why I asked you about decisions is because, for the most part, you can see from this list here that the majority of us have a fairly, you could say, flawed concept about our decisions, don't we? We basically would prefer not to make them. We basically prefer to get somebody else to help us make them. We basically don't want to take responsibility for them. And we basically believe at the end of the day that it's going to lead to pain and fundamentally we're just sort of hoping for the best with many of our choices in life, rather than knowing that it's going to have a good outcome or a bad one, right? We are fundamentally quite flawed when it comes to making decisions. So, bearing that in mind, can you see how open we are to suggestion in our mind? Can you see that? So you think every one of these things makes me open to a suggestion, right? So you look at decisions I make are mine only. So now, whenever thoughts pop into my head, I'm going to think they're all mine. But what if they're not? What if they're coming from sources that are malicious towards myself or towards others? Or what if they're coming from somebody who has belief systems that are completely in disharmony with the reality of God's truth? What happens then? If I think they're mine, can you see that I'm going to make choices and decisions thinking they're mine, but they're somebody else's? Right? They're right. But what if they're not right? Can you see, if I believe they're right, but I'm not willing to assess whether they're right, I'm going to be very prone to somebody confirming they're right. Now, if that somebody happens to be an unseen person confirming the decision is right, I'm going to feel good. And if there's an unseen person who actually knows the decision is wrong, and so they try to give you a bad feeling about the decision, you'll go, oh, I don't want them. You know, like, oh, that spirit's a bit creepy or whatever, trying to force me into decisions I don't want to take. Or that we might even believe that spirit is unloving, when actually they are the most loving spirit around us, trying to tell us don't go there. Right? But when we want to believe something is right, so an example of that is you find somebody attractive. So, and you're not in a relationship and you've been looking for your soulmate, and so you find somebody attractive, and what do you want to tell yourself? They're my soulmate. And so when some spirit comes along and says, yes, they are, where do you go? You go, I got confirmation from another source. They're my soulmate. But what if that spirit's got malicious intent? Right? What if that spirit set up your relationship? What if that spirit even made you go to that location just to meet the person? Because they wanted to set up the relationship. Right? Can you see, if I don't know what's happening, then I'm now in a dangerous situation, believing that what I feel is right, and I'm getting confirmation that it's right, then it must be right, and I'll tell myself even that it's from God in that place. Right? And by the way, God does not tell you what to do. Ever. Ever. He never tells you what to do, because to do so would be against free will. Right, so he's not going to tell you what to do. All he's going to do through the conscious is tell you what is right and what is wrong, which is different than telling you what to do. So every time somebody says, oh, God told me to do this, I go, no, that wasn't God. It's never God. If God says something is right or wrong, now that I can potentially believe, depending on what's being said. But when they're saying, God told me what to do, completely wrong. That's always wrong. God's never going to tell you what to do. God doesn't give you a gift like free will and then take it away from you. You know, he's not going to do that. So, I'm in total control of my own life. Not true. Most of you have very little control of your own life. Like, if the government makes a decision, oftentimes it affects you, you've got no control over that. But more importantly, there's a lot of spirits around you making decisions for you, and you don't have the control you believe. And this is something we notice in a lot of Western societies lately, is that there's more and more and more intense spirit influence on every single person's decisions and choices. And the reason why there is because many of these spirits did not have a very happy life when they were on earth, and now they would like to live their life through you. And many of you have a better life, they think, than the life they had. And also, you are very easily influenced into doing things that you would not otherwise do. And the reason why you're very easily influenced is because you have a whole slew of addictions that they just need to press the button on. And you can think of your addictions like this. It's like, so here's red button, blue button, green button. Now, every addiction is like a unique button actually, but fundamentally it's like every single decision or choice you might make, you've basically got a yes, no or maybe. Right? So a go, a stop, or a maybe. Right? And so on every issue, let's say you are maybe. So you don't say you don't have a firm decision in yourself about, I'm doing this no matter what. So in other words, you don't have a firm decision to use your will directly for that purpose. Right? So you're now in a place where you're able to be influenced one way or the other, aren't you? What do they call that in voting? They call that swing voters, don't they? What do they call it here? Swing states, swing voters, yes. So on a lot of issues, you're swing voters. Does that make sense? Now, how is a swing voter influenced? Well,
How are the candidates currently
influencing the
swing states? What are they doing in those states?
Fear.
So they
manipulate
have fears, they manipulate fears, and then they also do something else.
Yep.
They pander to
Make promises.
they make
things better.
promises, don't they? Yeah, just find this.
Oh, we'll get it done. No, you don't know.
All right, so this is how you get manipulated with your with your decisions from spirits. They either push your buttons into making you afraid, so you don't do that.
Okay.
Ooh, can't do that. And then, or they push your button into giving you a seeming benefit. So now you feel, I can do that. So if you don't have a strong moral conviction in a certain direction, it is able to be manipulated one way or the other in any situation. Right? One way or another, it can be manipulated. So you could almost see your addictions as buttons. That somebody can just come along and push your fear button. And if they push your fear button and you're addicted to comfort, what's going to happen? You're going to do exactly as the fear dictates. Right? And all they've got to do is push that button to make you feel something afraid. The reason why 50 people didn't turn up today is because they were swing voters. They're easily able, make a decision. They hear Jesus and Mary coming, oh, that's great, and many times they seem quite enthusiastic, don't they? So, and so they book up whatever, and we get 120 bookings, so we have to organise a big auditorium and everything, and obviously we pay more funds for all that, and we do all that, sort all that out, and then 50 don't come. Out of 120, that's like 40%, maybe a bit more, of people are being swung around. And all that requires is, if you're in a state of fear of one issue or the other, all that requires is just somebody pushing that button. And every addiction you have is a button, right? That somebody can push one way or the other, manipulate one way or the other. This is why it's so important to deal with your own addictions, because it's easily manipulated. When you have an addiction, you're easily manipulated. Yep. So if you think of all of these things, some of these things are decisions. So this statement here, decisions I make are mine only, well, that is actually a truth as long as you have no addictions. But if you have addictions, that's no longer a truth, because you're getting manipulated with your addictions. So decisions I make are right. Well, that is when you're in a state of connection with God, and once you become at one with God, that'll be correct every time. The decisions you make every time will be right. When I say right, they'll always be loving. That doesn't mean that there'll be one right. There might be many rights. Though if they're all loving, they'll be all right. Any decision you make, if it's loving, is right. But when we're in a state of addiction, every love we have is tainted. It's flawed. Right? Our addictions are things we love that we, from God's perspective, should not love. Right? So when we say they're right and we're in a state of addiction, most of the time they're going to be wrong, unfortunately, because our addiction will dictate whether we feel it's right. And our addictions will say things are right that God says are wrong, that are bad for you. An example of that is the average woman on earth believes that nurturing her family is an act of love. Isn't that true? You've been brought up on it. You've been told from childhood that a woman, this is what a woman does. Girl children are given babies to nurse from the time they're 2. Babies to nurse. You're told that you must have children. You must have a life where you're involved with your children all the time. You must do whatever your children want you to do. Right? All of these things are false from God's perspective, but most people on earth believe are true. And so what that's going to do is it's going to cause you as a woman to go and do a whole heap of things and be a whole heap of things, be a family and your children. If you don't have children, you'll desperately want them, and as a result of that, and yet, God doesn't value you based on whether you're a mother or not. God values you all the time, and you cannot be a mother your entire life, and God will still value you. So the real problem is who else values you when you become a mother, and oftentimes that's family, your own mother, your own father, because they want grandchildren, and there's a lot of pressure, and
Other women.
the other women don't feel you're a valid woman until you have a child, and then oftentimes you're taught from a very young age, and you don't even realise this because you don't realise that it's an addiction rather than a reality. Now, having children is just, God made it to be a fact of life so that procreation could occur, but they're not yours. They're not yours. They're God's, because God created the soul. Right? If God created the soul, then the child who inhabits your 2 bodies that you and your partner created through the sex act, which is not really your creation either, because God created the entire process of the amalgamation of the 2 cells that cause all of that. So even the bodies are not really yours, you just participated in creating the bodies. And the soul of the child is certainly not yours, and it's also half of the soul, not the whole one. And if you add all that up together, you go, well, why am I so addicted to having my own children? We've got friends in the spirit world who have 50 children, none of them are their own. And they look after them because they love their children, but they don't do it for something they needed for themselves. Right? So they didn't do it because they needed to feel like they needed to be a mother or a father. Make sense? So when I'm in that state where I want that, I can be so easily manipulated and by my feelings. I just got to push the child button. And I'm willing to have arguments with my family and arguments with my husband, and I'm willing to go down the track, and I'm desperate, willing to go through IVF programs, which actually cause abortions of many children, and I'm willing to do all of that just for the sake of me having a child. Right? So I'm willing to break so many laws just for that sake. And all it requires is somebody pushing the button and saying, you should do that. Right? And because I've got the addiction inside, I feel like I have to. Right? And usually that button is more highlighted when you're 35 and haven't had children than it is like when you're 25, isn't it? Right? Yeah. And those of you who have had children have come to probably see that it's actually requires a lot more from you than you expected before you had them. Isn't that true? And also you come to see that generally we're not very good educators of children. And we end up, because we didn't learn how to care for the child the way God would care for it, we in the end caused our children to believe a whole heap of things that were untrue, which is now damaging their own life, right? And sometimes that feels pretty bad, actually. So, but what I'm saying is all someone needs to do is push that button, and I'm willing to engage the process even in a loving manner, if I want to. So let's say I'm not in a loving relationship, I'm still prepared to have a child. Why not sort out the loving relationship first and be in a loving relationship and then have the children? These kind of things you'd have to consider, right? So we often believe that, we are in total control over our own decisions, but all it requires is, if I'm full of addictions, All it requires is somebody pressing that button and I'll go and do that, somebody pressing this button, I'll go and do that. And unbeknown to most of us, it's not a person that we can see pressing the button. It's a person that we're in codependence with in the spirit world that's pressing these buttons. Right? And this is something we noticed in our travels. Now, do you remember the example I gave you this morning about the guy that we met?
Which one?
The second set of guys we met on the plane coming to San Diego. Let me describe to you what they're doing. Because it's really interesting what's going on there, and it just gives you a bit of an idea of how things can get. So, we met, the two guys in particular we met on this second trip. Remember, there was the guy who was the leader. Let's call him, what should we call him? Man one. Right? He was the leader. His addiction was for power, superiority, through spiritual pursuit. The illusion of spiritual pursuit, because while he's wanting power and superiority, there is no spiritual pursuit, really. Okay, so that's what he wants. Spirits, come along. Look at that. Power, superiority, spiritual pursuit. How do I press this button? Now, if his spiritual pursuit happens to be the Christian faith in this case, Christian faith, right? It's going to have to be someone in the spirit world who believes in the Christian faith, doesn't it? Comes on, appears to him, says, I'm Jesus. You should do this. You're my apostle. Right?
You're chosen.
You're chosen. Makes me feel superior. Also, he wants to feel special. Right? Makes him feel special, superior. So he feels he's chosen. He believes it now. With everything in him, he believes it. Happy to go trip around the world teaching that he is the apostle. Happy to do this now because he's getting his addictions met. Right? There's another guy, let's call him Man 2. Man 2 happens to be a drug dealer. Right? But he's got spirits concerned about him being a drug dealer. Drug dealing doesn't end up well for the most part. There's a whole heap of reasons why, which we won't go into. But it's not an advisable profession. But he's very tempted in his life to be a follower. What's his addictions?
Acceptance.
He wants acceptance.
Someone else makes decisions.
Somebody else makes decisions. Yeah?
Your lack of responsibility.
Yep.
Self-responsibility.
Personal responsibility is a shortcoming, yeah.
He also has a particular set of chemicals, insecurities about himself.
Insecure, feels insecure.
Which cause him to look up to...
He needs a mentor.
Yeah. So both these men actually have quite a lot of issues with their dad that they are avoiding through these.
Both in competition with their fathers in one way or the other. This fellow's avoiding abusive behaviour from his father, or no father at all actually, I think. And this fellow here is feeling like more powerful than his father. Being told by his mother that he's better than his father. So now we've got two men. This one's getting influenced by a Christian spirit saying, give him a feeling he's special, he's whatever. What do I give this fellow?
Not good enough.
Purpose.
I give him a purpose, right? So I appear to him as Jesus, and I give him a purpose. Don't do this drug thing. It's bad for you, right? And this guy here, is more mediumistic than this guy even, so he actually sees the spirit. This fellow. He actually sees him, and then he views him as an angel, or in this case as Jesus, telling him what to do.
And it's actually the spirits with man 1 that are coming to man 2.
So these spirits here, so let's put them in red, shall we, so you know the difference. These spirits who want to guide this man because they feel he has potential to become a world powerful figure. So they've got to now somehow get him to help him. What do? You just appear to him, give him an experience, tell him what to do, he needs to help him. This is actually what happened to him.
And this is ongoing. This man 2 keeps getting visions that he tells man 1 about, which grows their following, if you like.
Yeah. So this man started off with, I forget how many at the beginning, I think he said it was just 7 people were listening to him at the start.
I was one over. But I heard him say once...
Then it went to 200,000 people.
And then once he'd had his visions...
And once he had his visions and everything, it's gone to 3.5 million people who are now listening to the man. And you know how they get all these people? It's very interesting. You know how they get them?
Spirits.
These same spirits go to Christian people who are Christian, and they give them a traumatic event. So they pressure them and put pressure on them and make them feel bad and make them feel like they're spirit attacked. And then when he comes along, the very same spirits step back. So it creates an illusion in the other people on earth, that actually
he's healing
them from demons. So these guys call them demons. So these people, the people who are easily led, unable to make some decisions and able to determine what happened. So these people here, you could say the real followers, right, are being influenced through a scam. It's a scam. It's a spirit scam, but it's a scam nonetheless. You follow? So by putting pressure on them first, these spirits putting pressure on, and just before, or leading up to an event where the guys rock up in their country, then they're encouraged to go along there by the same spirits. And to get away from their own pain and suffering, they do that. And then this man comes along, puts hands on them, and those spirits at that instant leave. So what does it give the impression of the person? He's got power over the spirits. Got power over the spirits. Man. And so what does it give him?
Authority.
More authority, more power. Right, from more people, and these followers now more honour, more respect of the person who's seeking the power and the superiority. So now what does he feel? He feels he's first class, man. So when they go travelling, he travels in first class, he travels in coach. Fair dinkum, that's what happens. He was travelling in first class, he was travelling with us in coach. Yeah. And the attitude is, the more and more this happens, the more he feels he's good, the more these feel he's good, the more he helps them, the more these people help them. So you end up with a momentum, don't you? That makes it all look from the outside like, wow, amazing. Yeah. Want a question? Yep.
So what's in it for the spirits?
What do they get? Well, see, every spirit who does this is interested in having a life on earth. So what are they having? They're having a life of feeling special, powerful, superior, over everybody through this man. And they look at all the things they can manipulate, and they think they're doing it for God. Like, there's so much corruption in it, but they think they're doing it for God. At some point, we hope to have a conversation with those spirits, but we tried when we were in the plane to have a conversation with the spirits involved, none of them would talk to us naturally, because they don't want to be honest and open about what they're doing, right?
So they feel, the feelings they have is, basically they're still in the addictions, so still in the
In their own
feelings
addictions.
that they didn't deal with in their earth life.
Oh.
So wanting to compete with others, wanting to feel better than others, these things kind of drove them. But when they were on earth, they were also part of the Christian faith. Then when...
But not in a heart sense.
Yeah, just...
It's not about God for them.
No.
No.
It's like it was a social construct, you know, that they were a part of. But they do believe that they're doing something good for Christianity, but they're not honest with themselves.
They feel they're improving the Christian movement,
Yeah.
but they're very dishonest doing it.
And they feel like the feelings is almost like a high they get from being in this addiction with the guy. They feel like that's proof that they're spiritually superior, you know, that they're doing something good spiritually because they get these sort of highs.
It's like when you're desperate for an addiction on earth, and let's say it's alcohol, and you have a drink.
Yeah.
I've got satisfaction, I've got relief. Let's say you need a drug, then when you get that drug, you feel that's the relief.
What about when you
What about when you want power?
Yeah.
It's only when you get power that you feel the same feeling
Yeah.
of elation. Yeah.
If you really want people to approve of you and you go somewhere and everyone's going, oh, good job, you're like, oh, wow, this feels really good. So these spirits are earthbound. If they were to enter the spirit
And
world,
very like
they'd be in the hells.
Yeah.
That's why they don't want to go to the spirit world.
Yeah.
So they're just trying to continue their career of sin.
Making it worse for themselves.
Yeah. And in a state of self-delusion, although one of the reasons they don't want to speak with us is because they kind of know that you know what it's like when you're in an addiction and you're telling yourself, no, really, it's legitimate. You're sort of lying to yourself, and you know what you're doing.
But these spirits are darker than that. They know what they're doing. They're not silly.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is they're telling themselves a story to avoid the reality of that.
It's a story, but it's not a story they are really convinced of themselves.
No.
They're more addicted to these feelings.
Yes.
And so they don't really care about the story very much anymore. Yeah.
They're in a frenzy about it.
Yeah. Who was over here?
I have a question.
Yes.
So what you just described is exactly the guru phenomenon that happens in India.
It happens all the time in India.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I feel is the level of investment in keeping Hinduism alive is so high. I mean, it's played out, as you said, with the Dalai Lama and other religions, but even in Hinduism, because they seem to say they're non-denominational, but everything coming out of them is clearly, Hindu.
Hindu.
Yes, and and the interesting thing is when I discuss this with others, they say, well, isn't it better than them preaching about drugs? I'm going, yeah, but it's not about that. It's
not even better.
It's not better. At least there's some kind of
At least when people take drugs, they know it's bad.
That's right. There's some kind of societal pushback against drugs. But when you're going to a guru, a lot of times it's seen as a good thing.
And each and every one of these gurus will actually describe the moment they became a guru.
Yes.
Which is always the same.
Yes, like including this man Sadhguru, who's a big deal in India. When you listen to his talks, he says, his wife left the body volitionally, and he recalls the time when he suddenly everything he knew. And I'm going, when was the last time you knew everything overnight in any other field?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's really very, very rampant.
And it's always the same. It's always the same experience, magical, which a lot of people want. Most people on earth want a magical experience.
Seduced by it.
They're seduced by it.
And people go to these gurus because they have experiences with spirits when they're there, and then they're seduced by that as well.
And the spirits with them cause them to have those experiences.
Yeah, the spirits with the guru mess with the people on earth, and the people on earth, because they don't want truth and they want to avoid themselves, think this is spirituality, and it's really just spirit interaction.
Yeah.
Right.
Coming down here. And then up the back.
Alright, make sure I'm doing this right.
Thank you so much, first off. I was nervous at the beginning to say, hey, but with, I hope this is still on topic, I identify with everything you spoke on today, and with the interaction, it feels like once you're making a loving choice in harmony, you get that bombardment as well as they're seeing that shift. So like everything that we've experienced since your arrival, it's like compounded in that sense, and the more choices and actions you do in that, drawing you away.
That's right. With us, almost the opposite things happen.
Yeah.
where nobody wants us to share truth. Nobody wants to hear truth. Nobody wants to. And we have a whole bunch of bunches of millions of spirits following Mary around, just trying to get to every person negatively, trying to convince you that what we're teaching is not true. So we have exactly the opposite thing happen. Isn't that interesting? All these gurus and all these kind of people, he's really a guru too, all have that experience, but Jesus and Mary have the opposite experience. And you guys, when you come to see us, have the opposite experience. For the most part, it's very rare for somebody to come up and say, I had this wonderful experience last night. I know who you are and everything. It's more the opposite of that. We've had people come up to us and say, oh, yeah, I had an experience last night. They want me to kill you. That's very common, actually. And so the opposite experience is what we have to this. This is a very common experience in the world. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because most people, if they see something magical happening, they believe it is actually righteous. Rather than seeing, is there anything that's ever happened in my life magical that's been that righteous? Like, for the most part, when magical things happen generally, it's a precursor to some disaster generally. And the reason why that is the case, because usually those kind of things are spirit influenced in a negative manner. Now, there are times when there are magical things happening in terms of protection of self, where your guardian, the person who's responsible for keeping you alive, does things with you. Like, you're just about to cross a road and there's cars coming and they scream and you stop, and you didn't know why you stopped, but once the car goes past, you go, gee, I would have got killed by that car. Those kind of things are true and they are right. That's their job. Their job is to save you from disaster on earth if they can. But the spiritually magical things don't happen. Those things are all manufactured by spirits. And most people on earth accept them as real. And the reason why they accept them as real, because they want to. Because we have addictions. You can see here what the addictions are in this man. And when we sat next to him, it was really obvious, wasn't it, David, this man's feelings. Like he treated the others badly. He had a poor cup of coffee and he gave it to one of the others to drink and to test it for him. And anyway, and he went into first class. He boarded first. Obviously, they must have quite a lot of money, having 3.5 million subscribers, right? They have a tiered system. He's the apostle. He's the one that gets paid, and he pays the others a wage. So they have a tiered system where, like I said, $500 an hour. If you pay $500 a month, you get 1 hour with the guy. But the others are working for it. So there's a big discrepancy there in terms of treatment of people. There's not an equal treatment of people, and so forth. And so, there's quite a lot of problems with it all. But you see, when you're seduced by your own addictions, you don't see the problems. You just go ahead and do because you think it's right. You do it, go ahead and do, seduced by your own decisions. So beliefs about dealing with your addictions are a big problem on earth. The average person feels their addictions are innocent. They're not that bad. They don't cause disasters. But actually, all of your addictions make you open to disaster. And not only disaster based just upon your own desire to feed the addiction, but also disaster because if spirits come along and help you feed the addiction, the momentum to feed the addiction is even going to be greater than it was than if you had your own desire to feed the addiction. Right? And that attracts spirits And we see many people, particularly young men, when we travel, particularly young men under 40, heavily influenced by decisions made by spirits. Yeah. And they come to help us out sometimes over in Australia, and it's like you can't do anything with them. It's like talking to an automaton, a spirit automating the person, and you've got to talk to the spirit if you can. And in some cases, like in case of one of the fellows we know in England, it took us nearly 2 years to get to talk to the spirit who was actually motivating him. We only did it when we were in England last, and he came out a couple of years ago to Australia, and we couldn't talk to him then about it.
Yeah, that wasn't a couple of years ago.
Well, it'd be a year ago at least. It was at least a year, 18 months. Yeah, and so, it took us 18 months to even get to talk to the spirit who was actually motivating the young man. And once we talked to the spirit, the very first conversations where he was like, the spirit was, there's a recording of it, I think. Yeah, it was third, it was Danaher, UK, day 2, or day 3. Day 3 was where Mary did the mediumship. And and we had a conversation with the man called Errol, who was the spirit guiding this young man. And the spirit thought he was doing great. And it took some time to convince the spirit that he wasn't doing the right thing. Yeah. So, this is happening all the time. And what we're seeing in the States in particular, and also in most European countries as well, is that this is, in Australia there's not a lot of belief about spirits, but in Australia a lot of the spirits are more involved with things like alcohol and things like that. There's a lot of that in Australia. But here it's like a wider sphere of influence than that. It's a lot to do with your comfortable lives and money and getting wealth or power, and there's so many different areas we see it happening. And it's been very clear, as soon as we tried to even begin this trip, we got huge amounts of spirit attack. Like I'm talking, like for us, anywhere from 8 to 12 million spirits attacking us every day, the whole time. Right? Now, at home, it's normally about 4 million or so. So it's a lot, I know that sounds funny, but it's a lot more intense, trust me. And also, there's a lot of emphasis on us not being able to talk to you at all about these matters, about spirit matters, about the influences they have on you. Now, I don't want you to go away from this saying, oh, it's all their fault, because it isn't actually. If you didn't have your addictions, there would be nothing for them to press, no button that they could press if you didn't have your addictions. So the problem is your addictions. Your addictions create moral
vulnerabilities?
Not vulnerabilities. They're moral distortions. You could say you've either got moral fortitude or you've got the opposite of that.
Corruption.
Moral corruption. So your addictions create moral corruption within inside of you. And that moral corruption causes the ability to be able to press your buttons. And the spirits, many of them some of them that are around you are family, like grandparents or parents who have passed, or grandparents or great-grandparents who have yet to progress. Others are just very opportunistic spirits who felt that in some other country or way of life they didn't get what they want while they were on earth, and they always had in their mind, oh, if I go to America, there'll be more opportunity for me to do things, more freedom for me to do things, right? And when I say America, I'm just using America as an example because you're here, but any Western nation that has wealth is going to attract a large degree of spirits who have come from places where there's no wealth and want to relive their life on earth again through you by motivating you to do the things they missed out on doing. And so there's a large amount of codependence, and because of these the issues we have, which remember I rubbed off some as well, the issues we have about making decisions, making choices and everything, Every time we get help to make them, every time we get to avoid our pain, every time we get to get comfort, every time we sort of feel like, you know, oh, I'm getting expert advice here from spirit world, every time I have to decide something that I don't want to decide about, through my moral corruption, I am now open to the control of these spirits. Okay? So that's... Sorry? Oh yeah, that's right, we were here first, and then over here.
Hi, I have two questions. The first question is, what's the difference between these spirits that you're describing here
Yep.
and spirit guides? Like, how do you know which is which?
Right, your spirit guides, if they are working in your interest, will often suggest things that are against your addictions. Right? Whereas the people like this are only generally going to influence you along with your addictions. Right? So can you see straight away that makes it a bit tricky, doesn't it? Because you're getting influence in the direction you want to go, because that's your addiction saying, I want to go there. And then some spirit comes along and makes a suggestion to you. You're going to think, that's a nice spirit. He's encouraged me to do exactly what I wanted. Isn't that wonderful? And then when another spirit comes along who's trying to guide you spiritually, trying to guide you, conscious of the fact that you're going to have a life after this one, and he doesn't want you to get in that next one into hells. He wants to help you pass into the first or second or first sphere up the top of it, at least, so that you can have more happiness. So he's more conscious about your long-term future. He's trying to suggest things that don't do your addiction. He said, you know, bad idea, bad idea. And you're going, who's that spirit who's bothering me about a bad idea all the time? Makes sense? And so this is one of the problems that we've found that our spirit friends are talking to us about, that in terms of their ability to be able to give you good advice. Frequently you're rejecting their good advice because it doesn't match your addiction. Yeah? So that makes sense to you?
Yes. And then my second question is about the beliefs.
Yep.
What about if you don't know what the belief is?
But that is the trouble, isn't it? Obviously, if you don't know, so let's say with these guys here, they're not really aware, are they, that this is their, you could say, their Achilles heels. You know, the areas that can be manipulated in them. In fact, this guy here thinks having power is great. He thinks feeling superior is great. He thinks feeling special is great. He loves it.
And he doesn't even really call them those things, because if he did, he'd think, oh, maybe that's not right.
Yeah.
He just thinks, no, I'm living my purpose, I'm serving, he even calls it.
Yeah, I'm brave, I'm courageous, living my purpose. I'm getting rewarded by God for living my purpose, is how he said it.
That would be a sin, obviously, according to divine truth, right?
When you say according to divine truth?
Well, I mean, I remember watching your...
according to God, let's say.
According to God. Okay. So according to God. So let's say if I have a belief system that
that I'm
I
spirit.
subconsciously don't know is a sin or is not a sin,
Yeah.
how would I be able to understand?
I understand your question. What I'm saying to you is that for the most part, we are already in a state where we don't know much at all. Our addictions mean we don't know much at all. The best thing to start doing is become aware that we don't know much at all. Now, to do that requires humility. Remember, we've been recommending for a long time for people to develop 4 primary qualities, right? What are they? Love, truth, humility, and faith, right? Now, can you see, if I'm humble, that would help me a lot, wouldn't it? Because I'd be able to go, I feel like I've got to have this thing. Like, let's say it's power. Let's say it's control. Let's say it's, I've got to avoid fear. Let's say I've got to have a certain drink. Let's say, you know, any one of those things mean that I've got an addiction of some kind. Right? If I've got to have it, then I've got an addiction. Right? So, humility says, feel your addictions rather than acting upon them. So whereas this is saying, act upon them. So the spirits will be saying, act upon them. Do that, it's good for you. right? See, if I was feeling that I had a desire for power over you, I would stop today. I would stop doing anything with you immediately. The person who's self-aware would do that. Right? The person who's not self-aware would let their addiction dominate them. So you've got to be really honest, because you see, the average person goes, oh, but I don't know I have these addictions. And that's not true. You do know you've got almost every, I can guarantee you, if you spent a little bit of time over the next few days allowing yourself to be properly inspired, not by these spirits who are feeding your addictions, but actually properly inspired by your spirit friends who are trying to help you, and you sat down and gave yourself some quiet time, which is very hard here in San Diego to get, I notice, because of the planes going over, and it's a very noisy city. But let's say you give yourself some quiet time and you sat with some inspiration. You'd probably out of this about 150 of your addictions in the course of a day. Yeah.
Can I give a personal example?
Sure.
So since doing Divine Truth...
Yeah.
Just hold the mic.
You've got to hold that one still. You can adjust, you can do this with this one.
Okay. Since learning about Divine Truth,
Yep.
I had gained a lot of weight because
Yep.
I've been processing a lot.
Well, it's not because you're processing well.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, I gained a lot of weight.
Yeah, it's because...
And I've been praying for the truth. And I think I'm processing these emotions, but I'm realizing I'm really not.
That's right.
So how do I get the truth if I don't know what it is?
Well, you know the physical result is you're putting on weight.
Right.
A person puts up weight generally because they're getting more angry.
Right.
And they're needing more ways to suppress their feelings.
Right.
So they're using food and other things to suppress their feelings, right?
Right.
So you know that. So internally, what you've got to do is go, right, I've got an addiction to avoid my emotions.
Okay.
So the thing I need to focus on first is my desire to avoid my emotions.
Okay.
Rather than try to process my emotions, I need to look at, I would like to not have to process any emotions.
Right.
Because I'm pretty uncomfortable processing emotions. I'm pretty uncomfortable, when we say processing, let's use a better word. I'm pretty uncomfortable experiencing properly all my emotions.
Or can we also say being overwhelmed by
my emotions. I want control of my emotions. I want some way to tone it down.
I'll have this much, but not like how I don't know how big it's going to be.
I'm happy to go through the emotion as long as I feel like I'm still, sane.
So fear.
Yeah, fear. Yeah, that's
well,
right.
it's actually anger.
Well, it's actually anger.
Resistance.
What many people call fear is actually anger.
Okay.
Well, you
I
think
feel
about
like I'm processing, and I'm like, I don't think I'm processing. And then when I
well, your
pray
body's
about
telling
it-
you you're not processing.
Yeah, my law of attraction is saying that I'm not processing this. So I'm like, it's a very confusing process for me.
No, it shouldn't be confusing because the response of your body is telling you not working. What you're doing is not working, so change what you're doing.
Right.
Yep.
So processing is, I don't know, such a difficult thing for me to kind of get through these layers.
Microphone, I can't hear you.
Get through these layers and get to the core, and I think some of it has to do with some of these beliefs, I think.
Certainly, it's all to do with your corrupt faith about emotion.
Right.
You would like to give yourself the illusion that you're processing rather than go deep enough to actually experience the actual feelings.
Right.
So when a person does that, they would create an illusion where they let themselves have some tears, but that's sort of like, you remember, do you have children?
No, I don't.
No, because you've had any time looking after children?
I work with children.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And so you look at a child who's in a tantrum. When he can't yell and scream, what does he do?
When he can't yell and scream.
Yeah. What does a child who's in a tantrum do when he can't yell and scream? He's not allowed to. What does he do?
Suppress it.
No. He tries another one first. He cries.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has his tears, but they're all, what do we call them? Crocodile tears, yes.
They're like, you're being mean to me, tears.
They're like, I shouldn't have to do this, tears. They're like, so really it's tantrum stuff. And many of us have to go through that before we'll get to our real emotions. Yeah, that's the stage you're in. Makes sense?
Thank you.
Yep. Now we're over here, I think. Back to Stephen, I think, first, and then come down. Yep. Keep your head up, Susan.
First, a comment on your discussion of the apostle and spirits influencing him.
Yep.
It's not just Hinduism, it's all, as far as I can see, it's all religions on the planet.
Correct, it is. Yeah, we've seen the same in Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim. You look at all the sheikhs and the leaders, the imams of the Muslim faith, same thing going on there. Same thing going in the Christian faith. Same thing going on in atheism. Exactly the same thing, just
it's all
different.
religions, right?
Yeah.
Carl Jung said religion is a defense against the presence of God.
Well, it's also a defense against reality.
Reality. Yeah.
Oftentimes, isn't it? So what God made is real, and often we want to defend ourselves against the real.
Yeah.
And so we come up with all sorts of ways of doing that, you know. So, you know, historically, I think on Earth there's been around 8,000 different religions created. Almost every single one of them needed a charismatic leader who basically enters the guru state, which, by the way, I did not do in the first century. Most of the people who followed me around in the first century tried to create problems for me, actually. You know, they'd set me up in discussions with people, which would then end up in arguments and fights and whatever. And you know, this is why the Pharisees were keen to get rid of me, because there was so much opposition to the truth. And this is the same on Earth today. There is a lot of opposition to the fundamental truth. And many of these religious faiths have been created to obscure the truth. Mm-hmm. That's the purpose. Just like, you know, even atheism created to obscure the truth. You know, even agnosticism, where you don't really have a belief, is created to obscure the truth. God wants to share the truth with all of her children, and the majority of us are pretty challenged by that truth for lots of different reasons while we're on earth, because we're growing up in an environment that's very anti-truth. And to get acceptance from your family, your friends, your religious, your culture, your nation, you've got to fit in with the nation's, culture's, family's rules. And if your assessment, your personal assessment of life is different to those rules, then you're going to be in opposition to them. So that the fundamental desire driving most people today is to just stay in the status quo. Stay everything unchallenged, everything calm, try to satisfy as many people as you can, and the people you can't satisfy, what you do is you just try to slowly leave them out of your life. You know, back away. And if they're in your face, then you just pander to them a bit, but still back away to the point where you no longer need to worry about them. There is never, you know, there's never something going, here's the truth, this is what we're going to do, and that's it, and come what may. Come what may. Whatever happens, happens with me living in that state. And for that reason, the majority of us don't understand the blessings, the beautiful benefits of being in that state. We don't understand it because we've only been brought up in this other paradigm which says fit in, you know, to everything. And it's a very fundamental problem we have on Earth. The main reason why there's been very little growth on Earth since the time we were on Earth in the first place, in the first century, 2,000 years ago, is because, when I say growth, what I mean is society has barely grown in its attitudes since then. And the reason why that is because of the family and this culture and society and religions all trying to keep the status quo for reasons such as this: power, superiority, control, manipulation, you know. And so very, very dangerous situation we're in, really, because very few people on this earth control what the majority of people do and say and think and feel. Yeah. And that's not how God designed it to be. He designed all of us to be individuals who are capable of our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own desires, our own concepts of life, not fitting into a paradigm that somebody else has defined. He wants you to be an individual. Yeah. But you're not going to be an individual while you have these addictions. Because let's say you, Stephen, and I both have the addiction to compete with our fathers, let's say.
Right on.
So I meet you, and I'm going, I want to compete with my father, so I'm going to try to compete with you. And you're going to compete with your father, so you'll try and compete with me. So now, every time you have a thought, I'm going to better your thought. And every time I have a thought, you want to better. And every time I do something sporty, you want to do it better. And every time you do something sporty, I want to do it better. But if I can't do it better than you, then I'll just say, what you're doing is useless. It means nothing to me. So, there'll be so many dynamics that get set up from that just one addiction. And I won't understand most of what's going on really, and neither will you in that place if we're both in that place. And this is the trouble, is that we've been brought up, we have these injuries, and we're not aware of the addictions that they engage. And also, unfortunately, because most of the world now doesn't really have a strong connection with anybody in the spirit world, aside from in addiction, the majority of people just automate them through life in their addictions, getting heavily influenced by the spirits who are controlling their life, and we think we're living a life.
So would you say that an attachment to a belief that is false is what creates addiction?
Fundamentally, yes. Okay. And particularly to a spiritual belief that is false. Okay. So you can, in our previous conversations, we have talked about layers of hierarchy of beliefs, starting with the spiritual ones. So the beliefs about love, for example, is a spiritual belief. Beliefs about truth, spiritual beliefs. Beliefs about humility, are spiritual beliefs. Then there's spiritual beliefs, emotional beliefs, sexual beliefs, and physical beliefs. Yeah. And now, the ones that have the highest is the spiritual beliefs. Yeah.
Are there such things as actual fundamental, authentic, innate needs? Is there a distinction between a need? How can you tell the difference between...
Not for the soul.
Not for the soul, but for the body?
Well, for the body, yes, because the body has specific limitations. So you need oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and your spirit body doesn't need oxygen, but it does need other sustenance. Like there's things that it needs in order to survive. But your soul, no. The only fundamental thing your soul requires to survive is to recognise there's another half of it. Because obviously, if I'm just a half, then there's limitations with that. But once you become a complete soul, no. There's no thing that even as a perfect human, there's nothing else you need. You don't even need God. Right? You don't even need God. But to get above the sixth gear, you'll have to.
So in the lower spheres, there are what you would call needs, but are these things that help us progress through the fifth spheres?
Not usually, no. They help you stay the same. So fundamentally, the things you call needs are addictions that cause you to stay in the same state. So an example of that is, let's say, I think I need love from somebody, partner, let's say. Right? Now, you don't need love, you need to learn how to love, which is different than needing love. So you can love somebody else without being loved by them. In fact, that's what love is. Loving somebody else without being loved by them. Without getting anything in return. And so you can learn to do that. But most of us think that, no, I need to be loved. Now, it is true though, see, during our formative years, like when we're a child, there are certain basic things that God would like us to be taught that will help our life greatly if we taught them young. One of those things is taught how to love. That's a fundamental thing. If we're taught how to love, it's going to benefit the rest of our life. You imagine if you're at school and instead of learning maths, science, English, numbers, all that stuff when you were 5, the very first thing you learned was love. The next thing you learnt was truth. And how to measure it. Next thing you learnt was humility, how to be humble. And the next thing you learnt was what faith is, what it really is, not the imaginary thing. And you were taught that when you were 5.
Instead of 76.
Instead of 76, yeah. So you imagine how your life would have been. Yeah. It would have been very different, wouldn't it? If you knew what love was by the time you became a teenager, you would never have engaged in any addictive love, much of which leads you to sadness, right? And you would also, if you were humble, you'd know how to deal with your feelings. See, the average person's in their, like my age, older, I'm 61, older, in their 70s, still don't know how to deal with their feelings. You know, they're still trying to avoid their feelings. The average person never learns on the earth how to deal with a feeling. They learn how to suppress them, but not how to have them, to experience them. Most of us are highly judgmental about feelings. Right? So they are our beliefs about emotion, they're our beliefs about humility, which are all to do with spiritual beliefs. So any corrupted spiritual belief is going to end up with pain and suffering.
And addiction.
And addiction. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Good question. Come forward, and we'll just go forward one at a time.
I've been meaning to ask you this since I started to listen to your teachings. How do you both experience spirit attack? I mean, how do you experience it? Because
it's pretty much the same as if somebody comes up and punches me in the nose.
So physically, the symptoms both of you experience, do you actually feel?
No, because as you deal with certain things internally, the attack doesn't affect you. So if you have symptoms from the attack, it's because of your own unhealed areas of your life that you need to address. So once you deal with and address those areas, the attack will no longer be able to affect your body, your spirit body, or your soul. Right? So it's just an acknowledgement that lots of people hate your guts and would like to kill you.
Okay, so
yeah. And can we differentiate between spirit influence and spirit attack? Because we do talk about these things a lot, don't we? And sometimes
spirit attack usually happens when you're no longer getting influenced.
Yeah. So spirit influence is more like what Jesus was describing before. When you have addictions, you still have, like, can we call addictions sinful desires based on false beliefs?
Another way you could label it is things you love that are bad for you.
Yeah, that's an addiction. Yeah. And so spirits can influence you through that desire to either avoid pain or seek pleasure. So that's influence. And then as you grow will in harmony with love, so you grow in your morality, then often you find you are facing opposition from spirits around you who would like you to not use your will in a loving way, but to use it to meet addictions, their addictions. Because a lot of the time, as soon as we start to do that, there's been a lot of spirits around us who have been meeting their addictions through us, and they start to oppose that. So that's more like spirit attack. And spirits attack usually in the ways that you are still open to influence. So you might have a will that you're developing in harmony with love, but you can still have injuries that make you open to influence that you have to, if you like, fight against in order to keep your will moral. And so spirit attack, if it affects you, it's affecting you where there's holes or where there's unhealed things. And it often feels like it can be someone being very nasty and attacking and mean. So I feel that emotionally, you know. Or it can be someone or a group being manipulative, undermining. You don't really know what you know. That's not really, just like a person on earth.
Making you feel bad about yourself if you pray.
So affecting your worth, affecting your confidence, affecting, or telling you now you're really harming people, threatening you.
Making you feel guilty.
Yeah. So anywhere that you're open, that's how they will they're trying to influence you still, but now it feels like an attack because I want to go in a certain direction and they're trying to pull me back.
And you perceive a spirit oftentimes as the emotion, or you actually...
No.
The reason I'm asking is, when I see patients, I can feel someone's spirits with them, and I can feel the anger of the spirit.
Yes.
And when I work on somebody, I can actually feel the spirit's working with me. They have a certain flavor. I can't talk. I'm not by any means.
But they have a loving flavour, don't they?
Yes, I think that flavor is different. Different spirits have different flavors. So
yes.
I'm able to feel that. I am not at all mediumistic, but I can feel
Well, that is everybody is mediumistic.
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone's a medium. Yeah. And what you're describing is definitely you engaging your mediumistic senses.
Yeah.
So that's why the anger that I feel sometimes, and I recognize that I must have energy stuck somewhere in my soul that it's affecting me in one particular part of my body versus another on any given day.
Yeah. But some people experience spirit attack physically, they feel like a physical sensation. I think the more emotionally sensitive you become, you feel it like the emotions of a person, you know.
Oh, I definitely feel the part of the negative, self-talk very strongly.
Yeah.
And you guys have brought up a ton, so the first half hour here was very difficult.
Yes.
But thank you.
And also the spirits around you obviously frequently don't want you to be around someone telling you the truth.
Yes.
So, that's when they usually put on the most pressure. And like I said, that's why 50 people aren't here today.
Yeah. And it's why also just like in the lead up to lunch, a lot of you were feeling pretty
low.
Engaged, like, but that's sort of, because that's why Jay wanted to
Why I
talk
wanted to
about.
have this talk with you is because I want to sort of lighten the mood a bit. And the way to do it is to tell you the truth about what's happening to you. Yeah, about the influences that are upon you. So this was really just an illustration of how your own personal addictions either will get fed or attacked by the spirits, depending on what they want you to do. And the way I sort of see them is like buttons, where they can just activate that button and activate that button. And because of the addiction, as soon as we're activated in that button, it's like getting a robot putting into a program, Oh, there I go, I'm off doing that, And, oh, there I go again, and I'm off doing this. And sometimes that was opposite to this, but, because of the different addictions getting pressed at any one point in time. And so it's very important to understand that the addictions are not innocent little problems that you have that you should ignore and generally try to feed. They are things for your own sake you need to get rid of. Completely get rid of. They are sins that you need to get rid of. They're going to cause pain and suffering. Now, if you are focused on having them fed, you are going to be very, very prone to all sorts of spirit influence that for the most part, you will enjoy. You will like it, right? And this is where most people commit their sin. Most people take the behaviour, sinful behaviour. This is where most people engage sexual behaviour that is sinful, or like moral behaviour that is sinful, where they act out of harmony with love, or they stop acting in harmony with love. So an example of that was the very first man I met on the plane, where I'm sitting next to him, and he had the opportunity to love his neighbour just by having a chat with me, or but he zones everything out, right? He's like most people nowadays that have got a sort of like a force field around them saying, don't mess with me, don't even talk to me unless I want to talk to you first, that kind of feeling they have. And that's because there's a lack of interest in his brother. Does that make sense? When you love, you're interested in your brother, right? Not when you're tired, you'll have to sleep then, and not when you want some peace and quiet because you need some peace and quiet then, but you will be still interested in people when you've got the opportunity. And so the fact is that if you look at, you look at most Western society, everybody is very insular at that. Right? How many of you from San Diego? There you go. Did you know? Some of you know, because you were brought in by, contacted by the same person. But, we can be in the same town with somebody who believes the same thing as us and not even know they're there. It was interesting in Canada. We met, there's a group there that got formulated, they call themselves the God Group. There were, I think, 8 or 9 of them. For many years, they talked with each other without knowing they were both all interested in divine truth. They come from the same small town, 5,000 people.
Wow.
And they didn't know. We're so insular that we don't even... Like, when I meet you, you'll notice Mary and I ask you a lot of questions, if we got the opportunity, right? What about this? What about your life? What about that? Most people don't do that because they want people to ask about them, which is their addiction, right? but they don't ever ask anybody about themselves. And that's a lot because we don't know how to love anybody. We want to be loved, but we don't know how to love others. Right? And I suggest if you don't know how to love others, then you don't know how you should be loved either. Right? As well, which is a problem. But this is the main reason why, is because our beliefs about love, truth, humility and faith are all flawed in some way or another, and we don't think they matter very much. And so we're just walking through our life doing things, thinking that the things we do are the things that matter. Right? But actually it's the things you feel that matter. Because they will motivate you to enjoy the things you do. You need to learn how to feel what you do rather than just do. But the average person on earth, of course, is not even taught that. Imagine if you were taught that when you were 5. Yeah. Do you think by the time you were 12, you would be still going, oh, what do I do in my life? What do I do in my life? You know. By the time you're 12, if you were taught that at 5, you'd go, yeah, 12, I'm an engineer. I'm already an engineer. I love engineering. That's what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? If that was your passion, you would know it already. By the time we're 15 or 16, we've gone through puberty, we probably have already met our soulmate. Right? Because our passion and our desire would be on show for anybody to see. And the way God designed it is just, if your soulmate hasn't been aborted or miscarried, then you're going to meet them on earth if you're in a state where you're realising your own passions and desires. There's all these wonderful benefits that happen as a result, but the average person goes, well, I'd rather my addictions. They're not bad. They're okay. Yeah?
Thank you. I have a question about relating beliefs to addiction removal, which I've been working on. And I want to make sure I have an understanding of the mechanism, or a reasonable understanding of the mechanism. So my understanding is that beliefs really are fundamental here, and they will then connect to your desires. So in other words, the desires appear to arise out of beliefs. I don't know what else I mean, I know there's instinctual.
You mean the decisions you make?
Yeah.
So stop being so technical for a moment.
Okay.
Is it John?
Yeah, John. Yeah.
You're very technical, right?
I know.
We need to make it simple because we need to make it so a child will understand. So let's call it your decisions, not the decider.
No, desires. He said
Sorry.
desires.
Oh, yeah.
Not call it the desires, call it your desires.
Yeah, okay, on mine desire. Yeah, well, it's strictly a one-person thing. I'm just talking about here.
Yeah, so don't try to generalize it, try to be specific.
Yeah,
in terms of
so I have specific faulty, well, let me give the bigger picture perspective I have.
Yep.
And you can I ask you if it's fair to say that all sin is basically faulty beliefs and faulty behavior.
Well, it's faulty emotion, isn't it?
Well, that's in between, so that's what I say. The
Yeah.
faulty beliefs lead to faulty desire that leads to faulty will and actions. And I'm just wondering if, it's not that easy to edit your beliefs. You know, you can't just go in there and say, well, I think I'll delete these 2 beliefs.
No, exactly. It'd be nice if you could. But
Let's put a hierarchy on the beliefs though. Because there are certain types of beliefs that are more important than other types of beliefs.
About truth.
No, so let's say the spiritual beliefs, the things you believe about spiritual matters, are going to have the highest impact upon your decisions. So that's things like love, truth, humility, principles, you could say, faith, in terms of principles. But there's also things like the beliefs you have about the soul, God, and so forth, right? The spiritual beliefs, they are going to have the highest impact on the decisions you make. So an example of that is if you believe the soul dies, then the next beliefs that come along is eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow I'm going to die. Which means I can do anything I want because tomorrow I'm going to die. Which means there is no God. I don't have to worry about what happens after I die. I need to just get mine while I'm alive. And that's going to cause you to do so many things wrong in terms of morally wrong, right? So you can see that these spiritual beliefs, they formulate the main reason why we make a decision or choice. Right?
But, sorry.
Oh.
No. It's all right.
Oh.
No, sorry, I feel like you're going somewhere and I'm going to...
Well, yeah, you're going to snag me.
John, you sort of said there's beliefs and then emotions and then...
Desires derive from beliefs.
The problem is that the beliefs are inside of you emotionally.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And they're formed through sin. They're not the
Experience.
originators of sin. They're an experience that's been shut down.
Can we label it what it actually is? Memories.
Yes.
Is what it is. Now, what are memories? Memories are a sum total of all of your sensory experiences.
Experience.
What else?
Experience.
All the emotions you tied into those. Internally, yes.
Beliefs.
All memories are, beliefs are formulated from your memories. Right?
Also beliefs about other people and things you see.
Yeah, but that's...
But they are from experiences.
So things happen, and we have emotions and we have sensory inputs around those events and things happening. And
It all gets fed into the soul.
Yes, and if it's shut down in any way, then we start to form beliefs. Or even if it flows, actually, we form beliefs.
Oh, so you'd say beliefs are not necessary?
No, beliefs are a part of
Beliefs
human
matter,
existence.
right?
But you're saying that's how the fault, sin enters into the soul, is through faulty beliefs.
Well,
I'm talking about the formation of belief.
They're through experiences, sensory and emotions, that happen that we store rather than experience.
Right.
We store them. Now, of course, our memories also include what happened to us intellectually, you could say.
Decisions we made about it. Yeah.
Decisions, choices we made, all sorts of things. These form our memories. But when the memory gets stored emotionally, it's because you haven't fully experienced it. So an example of that is, let's say you're married and you really love your wife and she dies. The average person then will choose to not fully experience their grief. Now, when they choose to not fully experience their grief, they've now got these memories of the relationship that's also tinged with all of this grief for the loss of the relationship. So instead of feeling joy when they contemplate the relationship, all they feel is the sadness of the loss of it. Because they haven't experienced the sadness and released it. See, if you experience the sadness and release it, all you'd remember is the joy. But because we choose to shut down the experience, the emotional experience in this case, we're choosing to shut it down, now it gets stored in the soul as a memory, and it's a bad memory.
Yeah.
Associated, when I say bad, it's painful. The painful emotion, the sadness, is in me, and I haven't let it out.
But wouldn't that also pertain to the happy memories?
Of course.
Yes, but what
But
we
you're
talk...
less prone to shut
You
them down.
don't want to release the happy memories, I guess.
No, the average person will experience the happy memories, and there's no opposition to continuing the experience of them because they're happy.
But it's not problematic for some reason, whereas the sadness is something that has to be allowed to depart the soul.
Well, God created your soul to allow all emotion to pass through you and depart.
Including happy ones.
All of them, yes.
So nothing stays there. It's just...
Well, what bliss is constantly having happy emotions pass through you.
Okay.
All the time. New experiences that are always happy.
Because the future is much more important than the past, it seems.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
And
the trouble is, by locking up the memories, we make the past more important than the future.
I guess to get to my question on
You didn't
that,
hear my answer, but go on.
you're locking up the negative. And my question is about the positive. Would not the same apply to the positive as the negative?
Of course it applies to the positive.
If you shut down a positive experience, you're also going to create a false belief, a problematic belief. And some people do this. It's common. If something's so happy,
good,
is sometimes we can shut that down.
Yeah. A lot of times it's from a history of negative experience on that issue, though.
Yeah. But if you let all emotion flow, you're going to form beliefs. But those beliefs are more likely to be in harmony with truth because you haven't prevented anything. As soon as you prevent something, you form these corrupted beliefs. And
so a corrupted...
They can occur with both positive and negative emotions, of course.
A corrupted belief, okay, leads to a corrupted desire and a corrupted...
A future corrupted desire, yes.
Action.
So you can say it creates a corrupted faith, and that determines your desires. Yeah.
But a suppressed positive memory is not the same as a suppressed...
A suppressed positive memory has the same effect. So example, let's say, an example I can give you.
You don't deserve something.
No, say you're very little, and your dad comes home from work and he picks you up and he gives you a big hug, and your mum comes in the room and says, put him down, and you freeze. I'm not allowed to feel that happy feeling. It gets locked in you.
Or another even more simple example. You're a child and you're just giggling. It's something, you found something funny, you're just giggling.
Yeah.
And somebody says, shut up, right, to you. And you're just giggling. And somebody says, shut up. So they're locking up that experience. And they're putting a negative experience on top of that experience.
So you're still going to have to deal with it.
So that's going to create a belief about laughing.
Joy.
A belief about joy. That's false belief. A false belief about joy, yeah.
Well, this is where I was trying to go with it, is say that we have these false beliefs that lead to false or sinful desires, let's say, which lead to sinful will and sinful action.
Yeah, I haven't disagreed with any
So
of
it's
that.
a chain of events that comes down from the root belief. So if I need to learn how to...
But where did that belief come from?
That's why we pointed you to the memories.
Comes from the past memory, frequently.
Along with your interpretation.
Correct. Your interpretation of it is going to be based on your personality, or your nature, probably, and also based upon what you were allowed to experience around you. So for every one of us, that's completely individual. But how you experienced giggling, different to how I experienced giggling in my childhood. Yeah? How you experienced joy, different to how I experienced, based on personality, but also about what we were allowed to process. So there's error that enters us when we're not allowed, and these errors, of course, compound the problem. So I don't have any problem with the theory, John, but why are you having trouble putting it into practice?
Well, I'm trying to trace my error. I'm doing error troubleshooting, error detection, correction.
Can you see?
Yes, she says I don't feel it.
Correct.
This is why we pointed
We
you
want to
to
focus you on one thing.
Yeah.
You are tech. You are trying to do tech on your divine truth.
Formulation. Theory.
Can you see how you now want to disagree with me, but it's not helping you feel it? Yeah. So your wife knows, is it your wife?
Yeah.
She knows that you don't really feel it. You're in your head a lot trying to describe it all, not feeling it at the same time. And why does a person do this rather than experiencing it? Because you're getting really technically, intent on
the mechanism.
On the mechanism, but you're not having the experience. Why does a person get so intent on the mechanism? What's the point of doing that? You think it's to understand, but it's not. It's to avoid the experience. You'd benefit from getting completely out of this mental state of trying to understand the mechanism, and instead allow yourself, or work through the reasons why you don't want to allow yourself to have the experience. The beautiful thing in your mind about understanding the mechanism is that you get to control the experience. Right? Now that's not a beautiful thing from God's perspective, because bliss in the end is what God wants you to have, and you can't control it.
I don't see it as control.
I know you. Not everyone here can see. This is the trouble, you see, is when we have a certain type of feeling ourselves, even when it's described to us, we go, but that's not how it is. But everyone around us going, no, you're not just letting yourself have the experience. You're trying to come up with all of these. Well, you're into metaphors a lot, aren't you?
Yeah, identify the faulty beliefs. That's what I'm trying to do, so I can discard them.
But you're trying to use your intellect to identify emotion.
Okay.
And that's where it's very, very hard to do, actually. It's not God's way, by the way, either. Yeah. God's way is to feel the emotion, and then after you've felt it, you've identified it. Yeah. After, not before. So you can't identify things emotionally unless you feel them, is what I'm saying. You want to identify them before you feel them. That is because you have fears about feeling them, that you're not letting yourself address. Make sense to you?
Well, I know I have fears, but I didn't know that you could switch on a feeling or switch it off, and I thought I was always feeling, and everybody's always feeling. I didn't know you could just, like, dial it off.
You're using your intellectual control to keep emotions suppressed.
Mm-hmm. So I hear.
Sorry?
I've heard that a lot.
So you're not alone.
Not alone. You know, and men are more prone to this than women generally, as well, by the way, except when fear is involved.
I think us women are pretty. We've got other
some
techniques.
clever ways.
Yeah.
We've got other clever emotional ways. Men predominantly use their mind to tune out of having raw emotion. Men are generally taught to be afraid of raw emotion, and the key is to get rid of by dissecting why you're afraid of it, rather than trying to understand the mechanism. The better thing to do with your mind is try to understand why you're so afraid of it.
In the sense of an avoidance attitude or something.
Yeah, let's look at some men beliefs. Generally, men are taught if you have an emotion, you're a... What did you say? Sissy. That's not what so you're taught if you have emotion, you're a girl, not a man. Basically, what's wrong with a girl having emotion? See, this is also a problem for girls, isn't it? Because girls are taught having emotion, oh, you're just another girl having emotion. And you're taught as if your emotion's not valid, but it actually is often very valid, right? So you know, that's another problem. But if we look at what the man's taught, if you're taught, as a child even, you're taught this by both your mum and dad, ironically. Even mothers teach their sons these things.
My mother was insistent. I come from a large family of 7 children, and my mother was insistent on the older daughters, I had 5 older sisters, that they must never feel emotion, and my sisters were thrashed, spanked physically by my mother for showing any emotion, even in front of their teenage peers in high school. My mother did that. She was so angry, but she didn't want to see emotion. So I don't know the whole backstory, but I know.
Well, just look at that one issue for a moment. Just the mum spanking your older sisters about feeling emotion. Can you see you're not going to get the approval of the woman if you feel emotion? That's the belief, right? So this is one belief that's saying, I need to go all intellectual on it because I need to understand it before I do it, because if I don't understand it before I do it and I do it, what's going to happen? Like my partner, my mother, all the women around me are going to be upset, like having the emotion for a start. So there's that. But let's look at other beliefs for the man.
Faulty beliefs.
Faulty beliefs, yeah. Let's look at them though, because they are the things stopping you. And this is why you want to get into your mind. Yeah.
Oh, I can give you one that I was imprinted with. That emotions are something, animals have that, cats do. People have cerebral capability.
Correct.
Cognitive function, and we can reason, and we're way above the raw emotionality of the beast of the jungle.
So can you see that? It's condescending towards emotion, ridiculing of emotion. It's also saying that you become an animal when you have emotion. It's primitive. Yeah, so there's a lot in that, just that one statement.
Well, I come from an academic family.
Of course, that's very obvious. I don't think you need to even say that. Yeah. So, and you can see why. You can see why, because they were scared of their own emotions. They were terrified of their own experiences, right? And this is the problem, you see, is that the thing you've got to deconstruct is not how it all works, but why it's not working. And why it's not working is because of these false beliefs that are now in you as memories. That's why it's not working.
Yes, and all the memories are imperfect. I'm well aware of that. And they also have an emotional charge, I suppose. But the question is, what do I...
Not I suppose, but go on.
Okay.
They definitely have an emotional charge.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And from the passion messages, I understand that after a while, it's possible to remove that emotional charge and all of that. So
correct.
I've heard all the lessons over the last year.
Yeah. But see, one of the things that most people don't realise is you've got to experience it to remove it. Mm-hmm. So an example of that, let's say, you know the experience of your sisters getting thrashed, like belted, for having their emotions? Mm-hmm. You haven't processed that yet.
Oh, I got thrashed too. So.
I know you did. It's funny how you say your sisters did, but you didn't say you did.
Well, we got thrashed for breaking into the Girl Scout once, and that destroyed our whole relationship with father.
But if you observe your sisters getting thrashed because they were having emotion, can you see how much fear that would trigger in you about going through the experience of any emotion? Now, to release that, you're going to have to face some of the grief you felt and the fear you had when they got belted for having their emotion.
Oh, I wasn't present. I only learned about that a year ago. But I know there was other behavior like that, so yeah, I have to figure it out. So I thought it was all that I had to stay with the beliefs, but you're saying I have to go to the memories?
But the fundamental thing you're forgetting is all of them are emotional. So you have to actually feel them to go to them.
So play back the memories, but keep the emotional channel switched on so you don't bypass.
Just turn it on. Turn on the emotional switch. Just turn it on. All the way up.
You do not want to.
I need to equalize.
Yeah. So you see what you just did with it. So now he's turning it into a machine called an equalizer. You know what I mean? This is what you're doing with it. And the trouble is, what that does is it distances you from the feelings. John, what you're going to have to learn to have is to understand feelings. Now, for me, when I was in my 30s, I gave this description a couple of times in this trip, actually. Maybe I don't have to say the words again because I'll be able to remember the events.
Canada?
In Canada, that's right. In Canada, I think it was second day.
Yes, and in Chapel Hill you also described it.
In Chapel Hill recently as well. I described how I came to feel emotion because I was like you. I was in my head all the time.
Until 33,
all the time, yeah, from 33 up to 33. And I realised, man, I don't even understand what a feeling is. I don't even understand what any feeling really is. And so, you know, I had to go through a process where I tried to get words that describe feelings, and then what I tried to do is educate myself, not through my intellect, but to actually feel the feeling. Like, what does that feeling feel like? And I did that with hundreds of feelings, trying to feel what the feeling felt like. And I prayed about helping to feel what the feeling feels like. So I got out of my head altogether with it.
Well, you had a name. Really nice. You looked up words that correspond.
Well, that's where I could start because that's where my intellect was. But I got out of my head and said, I want to know what that feeling is. What does it feel like to be discombobulated?
To re-experience it in real time, then, right? Like play it back.
See what you're doing? It's going to the machine again. It's like the equalizer, the root up. This is a habit for you, yes. And I'm laughing about it, but it's a serious habit for you because it's detuning you from the experience. And this is something You've got to stop reframing. It's almost like somebody's got to put a, you know, if I was living with you, I'd get a gag. Every time you started talking about the equaliser, I'd put a gag on you. And the reason why I do that is it's a physical response that causes you to think, oh, here I go again. Oh, here I go again. In this addiction to avoid my feelings now. And if somebody did that for you, helped you just go. So every time Mary did it, it would go like that. Imagine after a while you'd be going, oh, here I go again. You know, here I go again. Now I've got to, it's an addiction. So with every addiction, the only way you can stop them is to stop doing them. And then feel what you feel. So let's say I stopped you from giving me any technical description about emotion ever again.
No more equations of emotion.
There you go. I'm stopping you saying that. You're off now. Hand over his mouth.
Well, isn't that what my mother was doing? I don't know.
Well, then do it again, because you just try to reason it out as well. You followed. So if I stopped you from doing it and you were just left with the feeling, what would you feel? And this is the thing you've got to do for yourself, because you're the one doing this to yourself. You're going to have to do this for yourself. You're going to have to stop yourself from engaging the addiction to get all in back in your head all the time, all the time, all the time. And you're going to have to like put a gag on your mind, if you like, and just go, okay, settle, what am I feeling? And instead of trying to describe it, feel it. So no descriptions, just feel it. What are you feeling? So whenever we start talking, what I notice for you is you straight away want to go to the intellect to describe the process, to understand. And what I'm suggesting is forget understanding. Your intellect, and this is something that you've got to come to terms with, your intellect is incapable of becoming at one with God. Completely incapable. In the seventh sphere is designed specifically to get rid of your intellect.
Yeah, I remember that, 7 and 8.
Yeah, so get rid of it now. Don't wait till then. Start getting rid of it now. Right? The seventh sphere is designed to help you in that process to finalise the process. But at the moment, you are so intellectually dominant and you're using it as a tool to suppress quite some harsh childhood emotional conditions. So if there's some, in your childhood, your family, I think atheist, is that correct?
Largely, yeah.
Yeah. And also very shut down emotionally, doesn't want any experience of emotion, only honoured the intellect.
Right.
And what they called reason.
The cerebral activities was
correct. So you've got huge amounts of needing approval and acceptance for all of that.
Mental.
Yeah, a lot of your worth is all hooked into that. You understand?
Yeah.
So at the moment, a lot of the beliefs are my worth is there, my value is there, everything is there and in the intellectual process, all because of this family of upbringing. So very dangerous, damaging to you it's been, but because you've trained yourself to enjoy it, to avoid the challenge of actually feeling emotion. Fundamentally, emotionally, you're like a undeveloped 2-year-old. Now, it's not a criticism, because actually most people here are undeveloped 2-year-olds when it comes to their emotion one way or the other. But for yourself, you're like a 2-year-old who learned to get rid of emotion altogether and to use my intellect only. Now, the average person didn't have that upbringing. The average person was allowed to have some feelings at least, some emotion at least. But you were not, right? So this is where there's a big damage to your childhood that has caused you to now be so in your head. And this is why you're going to have to educate yourself to settle with your emotion and almost to, like, here my mind goes again, here my mind goes again. And this is what I was like when I was 33. It was like, here my mind goes again, shut up. I would say to myself, shut up, just feel, right? Because every time I opened my mouth, it was my mind off again. And I had to learn how to just feel instead.
In other words, it's not a good idea to try to do error detection and correction on your belief system at all. You should just go for the emotional...
Feel your belief system.
Feel the belief.
And if it's in error, it'll release and it will no longer be there. This is the simplicity of God's way. It gets you out of your head completely. To get rid of an emotion that shouldn't be there, all you need to do is feel it. To help you have reoccurring emotions that should be there, all you need to do is feel them too. So all you really need to do is learn how to feel. And when you feel, afterwards, you will understand your feelings. Afterwards. Because it's only feelings that can understand feelings. Your mind is just a machine. That's all it is, responding to the soul's feelings. The mind exists in the spirit body, it's not in your soul. In your soul, the mind of the soul is your emotion. Right? So this is why the seventh sphere exists, to get rid of the mind in the spirit body from being dominant, so that you become dominant emotionally.
Well, I was confused by that. I've heard it for 11 years, but my question is, God's love and God's truth. It seems like it's all about the love and the truth and facts.
Which are all emotions.
It's emotion? Oh, even God's truth is emotion.
Even God's truth is emotion.
Okay.
See, most people think truth isn't emotional, it's just facts. Right. That's not true. God's truth, above the sixth sphere, you will not understand God's truth unless you feel emotion, because all of the truths above there are emotions. They're not intellect. So, growing to the perfect natural man, you can do it with your mind. But growing beyond that, you can't do with your mind.
Okay, just one more thought on that, if I could just say.
One more mind?
Yeah. We are so awash in programming and propaganda and error and all kinds of things that I see people everywhere not engaging the cognitive function that they could to be more discriminating. So
correct.
My feeling is that all kinds of unhappiness is because people have...
Can you see where you're going with that?
Yeah.
You're basically, the track of that is your emotions are the problem. And what I'm saying is no, it's not your emotions that are the problem. It's your inability to feel them without acting upon them that's the problem. It's your inability to feel them and let them go. You see, when a person has stored emotion and they don't want to let it go, then sure, what you're saying is true. They will act upon, they will have no cognitive function, they will just go ahead and do. And this is where people get angry and they kill people and all that kind of stuff. That's good. Not good. That's what your mum and dad were afraid of. Right? That's their fear. Their fear was, if you be an emotional person, there's no way of actually doing it in a loving way. Right? And this is fundamentally the belief that's flawed, that's existing now inside of you, is there's no way to feel my emotion in a loving way. If I feel it, I'll act upon it. If it's unloving, that means I'll do unloving things. And that's not true. What actually happens is when you feel your emotion and it's unloving, it passes through you and then you don't act upon it. When you feel emotion and it's loving, you'll have a desire that follows to act upon it. So in other words, let's say I want to give Mary a kiss. Right? Now, if Mary is not my partner and she doesn't like the look of me at all, and I decide to give her a kiss, can you see there's going to be problems? But if I feel my feelings about wanting to give her a kiss and just let it pass through me, then at the end of the day, I'll be able to determine, given her feelings, is it wise for me to give her a kiss? Now, if she doesn't want my kiss, if I feel my feelings and let the feeling pass through me of my desire, I'll be able to also feel hers and therefore know she doesn't want that. So that's even if I'm with her, I feel that. Right? And then there'll be other times where I feel the feeling, passes through me, and then I can feel from Mary she's open to receiving that. And so I'll give her a kiss. That makes sense? Now, in each case, I have to have the emotion pass through me so I understand my own feelings. And what I want to do, the emotion passing through me drives me to an action, but the action won't be taken necessarily depending on what I can also feel from her.
sensitivity.
So I've got sensitivity now, yes. But when I'm only focused on my own feeling and not feeling it fully, for myself only, I'm going to need her participation in my emotion. So this is where I might be tempted to force myself on her to kiss her.
Because you're not sensitive to her emotional state.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also not to mine.
Yeah.
That's why I need to kiss her in the first place.
So, you know, you're saying about people not using their cognitive functions to their full capacity now.
Yeah.
I agree, that's right, but it's nothing to do with people being lazy cognitively.
No.
It's because people are being raised to feel that they cannot cope with emotions. And so, therefore, as soon as they engage in a reasoning process, that's an emotional process. If they think, oh, what if I can't figure it out? Then I'll be a failure. They stop thinking. You know, if they think, what if I've got
to make a decision I don't like?
Yeah, and so they stop reasoning. What if I can't find the answer? So they stop reasoning. All of these things are emotional problems that are affecting how much reasoning and seeking intellectually is happening on the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really see the supremacy of the emotional channel, let's say, or the emotional.
No more metaphors.
No more metaphors.
That's good. Yeah, you see what happens is that once we habitually develop a certain way of dealing with things, it becomes an addiction. And once the addiction's engaged fully, we can't, it's hard to get out of it. So this is what you're going to face on. It's going to be difficult to get out of this habit. I'm sure your wife was sick of hearing it. So isn't that probably true, right? And so she can help you. It's not something that she's prone to doing herself because she's had a different upbringing. And you also got to come to love the fact that, well, be compassionate with yourself on this matter. Because when you're getting into this intellect like you are, you're not being compassionate with yourself. You're bossing yourself into a place.
Yeah.
Right? And so even though we've been making fun about the issue, the subsequent thing you need to realise is that you need to learn to have compassion for the fact this is how you've been brought up. It needs to change. You're not going to be able to progress receiving God's love very much with this feeling because it's all intellect, understand intellect rather than feelings. You're going to have to train yourself how to feel. Now, you've got a good intellect, so you can start to use your intellect positively to start to understand emotion and by feeling it. Understand that you're not going to understand emotion unless you experience it. And this is what my problem was with the beginning was, like somebody would say an emotion like, grief, like, I don't know what that feels like. What about, John, my friend John, Russell John, used to say he was discombobulated. And I'm going, what does that feel like? That's a long word, but what does that feel like? What does doubt feel like? What does distress feel like? What does condescension feel like? What does ridicule feel like? These are, you can list good things like joy. What does that feel like? What does heartache feel like? What does being heartfelt feel like? And the only way you can really work through all of that is by feeling those emotions and being open to the process of feeling them.
And you're going to have other emotions just about feeling.
Yeah.
Given the nature of your upbringing.
Lots of emotions about feeling.
Because it was so opposed,
to
it's
feeling.
going, there's going to be pain just about opening up to feeling.
Yeah. So your example is an extreme one because you've had an extreme childhood against feelings.
Yeah.
Right? So other people here have had less of that, where some people here were hardly even thought of at all as children. They were allowed to do pretty much what they wanted whenever they wanted, but mum and dad weren't around because they had a caretaker or a nanny or someone who did all that for them, And so, they're going to have different feelings to feel, right? So the key is to not criticise yourself for the feelings you have, or criticise yourself for your constant desire to go into the intellect. But you do need to address the problem because it is stopping you from having an emotional experience And just trust one thing that I want to say to you, and that is, you will only understand your emotion after you've had it. After you've had it, not before. So if you can at least trust that one thing, that after you have it, you go, this is what it felt like, and I understand why I feel like what I feel. After you've felt it, not before. Most people, particularly in our societies that have been brought up with a lot of education, want to know what they're going to have before they have it. Right? And that's a big problem. It's a big problem, and the more the powerful the intellect, the bigger the problem it is. Yeah. And this is why a lot of people in educated societies are now so detuned, women as well as men, so detuned from any emotional experience that most people are going to have to go through the process of educating themselves about emotion. Imagine if you were 5 and you were educated. What does condescension feel like? What does ridicule feel like? And you can handle it. Like, you can handle ridicule and not feel attacked by it. You can handle condescension and not feel worried by it. Imagine you're taught that you can handle anything and not be concerned about it. You can deal with anything, any future problem. You imagine by the time you're in your teenage years, any problem comes along. I don't need my mother and my father to help me deal with it. I don't need psychology to help me deal with it. I don't need anybody, don't need to go to the doctor, I don't need a pill to help me shut it down. I can handle it. Imagine going through life with that level of confidence. Well, that's the level of confidence God wants you to have about feeling your feelings. Right? Whenever we suppress our memories and feelings, this then makes us prone to this, where now we've got all these influences upon us, helping us avoid our feelings. Right? And so the guy who didn't feel special or needed to feel special when he was young needs this when he's an adult. The guy who didn't have any power when he's young, or he had whole power of the whole family when he was young. Like we know some 2-year-olds that have got entire control over their entire family. Because the family lets them, right? And so they're going to have power issues when they're older. Right? They're going to grow up thinking, I've got all the power. In every environment, I've got all the power. And, and they're going to grow up thinking they're better than mum, better than dad, therefore better than everyone else. Right? They're going to grow up not thinking of themselves as equals, but thinking of themselves as, I'm better than you guys, right? That's arrogance. Yeah, arrogance. So you can see how these things pan out. Now, to undo it all, you've got to stop your addiction. So in your case, your primary addiction is your mind. You follow? Mm-hmm. And for other people, it might be drugs or alcohol, or it might be physical substances like food, or it might be emotional things like need for power, need to feel special, need to be superior, all those things. But your primary thing is, I'm only worth something if I'm staying in my mind.
Figure everything out.
Figure everything out. I'll sort it all out in my mind. And you need to come to trust that everything above the 6th sphere, you will not be able to sort out with your mind. Not a single bit of it will you be able to sort out with your mind. So it's better to give it up now.
And honestly, any emotion, you can't figure it out with your mind.
No, because the only way you really understand an emotion is by feeling it. Yeah, and that's what I had to learn when I was 33, and that's what you have to learn. How old are you now?
67.
67, so sorry about that. Sorry about the fact that nobody has shared with you the importance, and also your childhood history has been such that you have shut you down this much emotionally. That's really bad, right? It's really, really bad. And so that's why I feel like sorry about that for your, not that I'm responsible, I'm just saying.
No, but it's also the case that my mother...
microphone can be here.
It's also the case that my mother made it clear, no uncertain terms, very often to all of my older sisters, that they were completely unwanted, unplanned, and unintentional. And
yeah, your mother was a mother who didn't even want to have children, right? Yeah. So obviously her main desire would be to control all of you into a rigid regime, because she didn't want any of you anyway, and now she's forced to have you, and now she's forced to bring up children she didn't want in the first place. Yeah, so that creates a lot of complexity with regard to love as well.
Well, how about self-love? This is my big problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I don't take care of myself adequately.
Yeah. You'd rather stay in the mind because that's the only way you've learnt to look after yourself. Yeah. So I understand you've got these problems. The key is to go, okay, now this is an addiction. I can change this. You know, you're pretty young. Yeah. Like a baby, really.
Relative.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Emotionally young. Yeah.
Well, emotionally, yeah.
Emotionally young.
A couple of years old because you haven't been allowed to develop any emotion fully your entire life, right? You weren't allowed. So that's very undeveloped emotionally. But also 67 in the scheme of your future life is...
That's right.
Yeah, it's just the beginning, right? Just the beginning of your life. So allow yourself to go, right, there's things I missed out on developing when I was a child. And this is something that applies to all of you. There's things you've missed out on developing when you were children. You're adults now, you can change this. You've got power, you've got abilities. And God created you to be the pinnacle of His creation. You're fantastic, right? So you've got the ability to change all of this. You can change these problems that began then, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you can change them, right? Have some confidence in you as God's creation with the abilities that you have to change things. But the way you change them is by connecting with the experiences. So these experiences we mentioned here, the memories that are all sensory, emotional, they're all experiences that have happened to you, is by connecting to every experience. And there's a lot of experiences from your history that are unfelt. Right, this is our problem. They were unfelt because we weren't allowed to feel them. And in our childhood, somebody else was physically threatening about us feeling them. But in our own adulthood, we've even taught ourselves to be scared of feeling them. Right? So we've got two problems. We've got the problem of our history with our childhood, but we've also got the problem with our beliefs that have been constructed surrounding what happened with our memories from our childhood. And these two things have the effect of affecting my ability to understand and feel emotion just by feeling it. Yeah. It's one of the biggest fears on this planet is the average person doesn't think they can handle their own emotion. It's an epidemic. If there is a conspiracy on the planet, that's the one. The conspiracy against emotion. Right? The conspiracy against having the capacity to feel anything, whether it's good or bad. And most people now are so restricted with their feelings, they can't even feel a good thing, let alone a bad thing. Yeah. They can't even know that. Most people don't even know what joy feels like. Most of us haven't had it for years, so we can't even remember it. You know, that's how long it's been. And so this is a problem. We need to re-educate ourselves how to feel emotion, because if we want the relationship with God, God wants it to be emotional. Yeah. And so for the relationship with God to happen, my emotions are going to have to happen. Right? And so the way I understood it, and this was before I started to develop my relationship with God again in this life, was if I didn't feel emotion, I was a zombie. I was walking through life like a robot, you know? And after a while I thought, what effect is that having on my children? What effect does that have on my partner, my friends? Walking through life like a robot, not understanding emotion at all. It's so debilitating, not only to myself, but also to every relationship I have and every friendship I have. And so I realised I need to learn, teach myself how to feel. You know, by this time I was 33, no one else is going to teach me, right? So I needed to learn myself how to feel. And when I say feel, I mean feel everything. Like, I had to learn how to feel anything, no matter how painful it is. Yep. Yep. I slept, for 3 months, I slept with a knife by my bed. Because I thought one day I might have to kill myself rather than feel. I didn't act upon it, because by that stage I've taught myself not to act upon it. But it was just a reminder. This is how bad you feel about feeling. You're willing to die rather than feel some things. Most of us are like that, right? We're willing to die rather than feel some things. Yeah. So, and it was a reminder every day. So it was like, yeah, that's why it's there. I'm willing to die rather than feel. So that's a problem.
Amazing.
Let's start there. One more question. Where are we? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay, so this question is about not being able to feel the spirit influence
Mm-hmm.
on. Okay, so I am not a strong medium, I don't think. And I'm very stubborn about not wanting negative spirit influence. So
Mm-hmm.
the conversations in my head, I think I'm just having with myself. Like, oh, so how can I tell when it's spirit influence?
Well, almost every conversation you have in your head, how do you converse it?
Well, it's like when I make a decision, I'm like, well, you could do this or
Yeah,
you could do that.
see how
or
you
not.
just refer to yourself as you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You're having
that's
a
how I know.
conversation with the spirit. Yeah.
Oh, with the spirit?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. So every time.
Yeah. Well, every time you refer to yourself as you, yeah. If it's an internal thought, it's I, isn't it?
Oh, well, no, that's what I mean. Like that's my mind. Like when I talk to myself, I'm like, well, oh yeah, you could do this. Wow. Okay. But I just don't feel it. I just don't feel the spirit influence.
I know that every time you hear you, they're talking to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't you say it was I talking to me with the I, think this, I think that?
Yeah. But how, if I don't recognize that, how can I feel that? Is there a certain way to feel when we're being influenced?
Well, perhaps that's something we need to discuss more tomorrow. But the very first thing I want to say, just reflect for a moment on just what I said about the you thing.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Quite often our language is such that we think we're talking to ourselves, but we're actually hearing a spirit talk to us. Right? So you say you're not very mediumistic. But you're mediumistic enough to hear people saying you should be doing this and you should be doing that. So that's pretty mediumistic in my book. So the average person is like this without knowing. So the real issue you face is not that you don't receive much direction, because you're receiving a lot. The real issue is you don't know who you're getting it from.
Yes. And how can I tell if it's negative or
good? You also said, remember, what did the you say to you?
Well, you could do this or you could do that.
Yeah, your you is trying to positive you up all the time.
Okay.
Aren't they? They're
Not
trying
all
to.
the time.
Yeah? No?
No.
What's the you doing? So when they say, tell me some of the things that they've said. Oh gosh.
I can't think of anything.
Well, you just mentioned a few of them.
Well, other things like when I think of something, because I'm going through counseling and past trauma, there's
Yeah.
like the negative there, but I don't know if that's because I'm dealing with trauma or if it's them like making it worse. Stuff like that. I guess I'm trying to recognize when it's myself versus them,
Oh, but I just told you how to do that.
if it's the conversation, the you.
Yeah.
When, I think it's a process. Like a lot of people want, if there's this and this and this, then it means that.
Yeah.
It means it's spirit influence.
Right.
But really, it's the same as when you're interacting with people and they're influencing you. You have to become sensitive, don't you, to the influence. So rather than us give you a dot point of this is how you're going to know, it's really good that Jesus has given you a pointer. Every time you're referring to yourself in the third person, maybe you should consider, is this me or is somebody saying this to me? And then when you do that, then you go, so do I feel like if this isn't me, does this person feel nice, or are they bossy, or are they cruel to me? Or so this is how you start to develop awareness.
Mary's going too far for me, though.
Sorry.
Just firstly be simple. Simple thing firstly. As Mary said right at the beginning, let's focus on that one issue first. The third person. You're referring to yourself in a third person state. If it was actually internal dialogue that comes from you, your thoughts, you would not be referring to yourself in the third person state. So obviously, anybody referring to you as third person means that in third person state, as they call it. I don't know why it's called that, because I thought it should be called second person state, but anyway. Anybody referring to you as you rather than I, right? I is me, right? Me, I, you, yours. Yeah? Anyone talking to you in your head is going to probably not be conscious of the fact they're doing this, but they'll be going, you should do this, you should do that, you should say this, you should feel that, you should take that action, right? And it's going to be a spirit, for sure.
Or a guide,
well, it could be a guide, but it's unlikely if they're saying you should.
Yeah, and this is where I know that's going too far, but then you can experiment with, well, what does this person feel kind? Does this person feel nice?
Are they changing my will?
Are they
encouraging me out of emotion?
Yeah.
Are they encouraging me to reframe everything all the time? Are they encouraging me to be positive all the time, even when I feel sad? What are they doing? Now, oftentimes people who are historically interested in you, like say great-grandma, comes to you to guide you. She might not have grown very far in her spirit state, and she might go, oh, you're too sad. You're too worried about dealing with this past trauma. I'm going to cheer you up a bit. Every time you have that bit of feeling about past trauma, why don't you go and get something to eat instead? I'll get, do that. Why don't you do this? Why don't you go and get an ice cream? Why don't you, get a cup of tea or coffee?
You're hitting it right on. Bullet point after bullet point. Yeah, no, that's exactly.
That's right. And so the spirit who thinks they're doing you a good turn, but actually is helping you avoid your feelings, and is thinking they're doing you a good turn by making suggestions to you. And because it's coming to you as, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you go here? Why don't you do that? Why don't you go there? It's somebody else, not you. Now, it's great, Granny, I think.
it's definitely family members.
It's a family.
Grandma. I think it's a grandma.
Yeah, great-grandma, I think.
Great-grandma? I've never met my great-grandma.
Yeah, I don't think you know her, but anyway.
Really?
But,
it's more than one. There's more than one.
Yeah, there's...
Oh, I do?
Yeah, and they're all encouraging you to skip over your trauma.
Oh, they are.
Because they don't understand the path. They don't understand God's way.
They're not divine truth.
No, they're family. No.
And this is another important clarifier, which goes to one of the earlier questions.
Mm-hmm.
You can, if grandma's around you and you thought she was quite a nice lady on earth, but if you thought someone was quite a nice person on earth and then you feel them around you, a lot of people go, oh, that's my guide, that's the person guiding me. But most of the time it's just someone who's just interested in your life. Yeah.
Most of the guides who are in the room with you guys are a bit frustrated because you're not listening to them, you're listening to other spirits. And you think because they're in alignment with your addictions that it's good. Right? And they go, like, how do we help them? And one way to help them is to have Jesus and Mary say to you, this is what's going on,
Yeah.
But if you're aware, so one of the ways to be aware, as I just mentioned, is every time you're referring to yourself as you, then it's not coming from you, right? It's coming from someone else. And this is a great way, isn't it, for people who have schizophrenia to understand what's coming from them and what's coming from someone else. Of course, if a spirit cottons onto that, and they're malicious, they may change their verbiage, but at the end of the day, the ones who are interested in you are not that malicious that they're going to change their verbiage to say I when they really mean you. Of course, some darker spirits may do that, but you'll find that out sooner or later. Yeah. So that's one way. Secondly, you're going to have to deal with some of your addictions. One of your addictions is to avoid your trauma. So they can easily make suggestions, oh, you don't have to do that painful thing. You don't have to cry there, and you don't have to do that. Why don't you just go and get a cup of tea and a bit of ice cream and avoid this feeling? Yeah, it's the ice cream and the tea.
It is ice cream and tea. What it is.
So why Why can't you do that? That'd be the way to do it. Now, these kind of spirits are indicating by their words to you that they are not on God's way. Because the spirit on God's way would not suggest those things. But they think they're doing you a good turn, helping you be happy. Of course, that's not true.
Well,
to be happy, you're going to have to release some of your unhappiness.
That's right. And often the familial spirits around you are more selfish even than that, because they're like, well, if you deal with that, I might have to feel something because I was a part in generating that in your life. So don't go there. You know, life's really not that bad.
Some of the childhood trauma you've experienced, they've experienced. So, you know, they don't want you to have to go there.
Or they were a part in the creation of your childhood experience.
But because I'm, you know, so interested in divine truth, does that mean maybe one of like my guardian is, or how do
You've got a guide who's but hardly you talk to them or hear them at all.
Yeah.
But you do have a guide who does sometimes influence you towards God's truth.
Yeah.
And that guide is trying to help you. But there is sort of like a cloud of family around you as well, and they often influence all of your internal dialogue.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the key is to recognise the difference. So sometimes when you like read the pageant messages, I think you have some, you know, then your guide can sort of connect to you then a bit. When you pray for love, your guide can sort of be with you and connect with you a bit there. But when you've got a lot of the internal dialogue, and when you try to process emotion, a lot of that is just spirits around you trying to get you out of that and encourage you away from that.
So I've always had goosebumps. Like when I felt goosebumps, I've always felt that that's God's truth, or it's something that I have to pay attention to. Is that even true, or?
Well, it's a spirit confirmation.
Okay.
Now it depends which spirit it comes from.
I know, that's the thing.
As to how the confirmation is valid or not, doesn't it? And this is something that you need to learn how to determine.
Okay.
But for the moment, you at least know it's confirmation from someone outside of you, giving you a nice feeling.
Okay.
That's of course if you classify goosebumps as a nice feeling.
Well, just a strong reaction to what I hear, and it's usually all over goosebumps. Like,
yeah,
you
it
need
feels
to pay
good.
attention to this. Like, wow.
Well, if you let yourself feel it.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the truth.
Oh.
It's their confirmation of what they believe is true. So you're going to have to determine what the difference is. Does it make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Now, guys, we're going to have to finish it there tonight, because otherwise Mary and I won't get home early enough to have dinner and go to bed. We go to bed at 8 o'clock, so so we'll have to finish it now today. So what we'd like to do tomorrow is continue this discussion a bit about beliefs, but we're thinking tomorrow we might incorporate a little bit of mediumship in the process, because we'd like to talk to some spirits who have some false beliefs as well. And just through that process, we might be able to help educate you about what you're going to need to do yourselves about false beliefs yourself. Yeah. So that's what we were thinking of doing tomorrow. And we were also thinking tomorrow we'd like to talk a little bit more about, and we might not be able to do it tomorrow because of where your questions are going, but we would like to talk a bit more about some, like just to say some false beliefs about God, and just to say what they are. Like, here's a false belief about God, here's another false belief about God, here's another false belief about God. And we'd like to also be able to say to you, here's a false belief about your soul, here's another false belief about your soul, here's another false belief about your soul. Just to, because what we find is we rarely get the chance to say to a group of people, here's the false belief, that's it, it's false. Do you know what I mean? And most people want to argue about it. We don't want to argue with you about it. We just want to say, this is false, this is false, this is false, this is false. And just make a list of false beliefs. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
The reason why we want to do it is it will open your thought and emotion towards the fact that some of your beliefs have been based on false beliefs. And if at least you even hear it, you'll be more tempted to investigate further. But if you don't ever hear it, then you're going to not investigate, right? You're not going to investigate further. The beauty about somebody sharing a truth with you, even if it's like a single line statement, is that now you can't unhear it. You follow me? And the beauty of not being able to unhear it means it's going to be bothering you at some point. which is, by the way, a good thing. You know, because it helps you question things and helps you discover new truth. So we would like to make a number of statements tomorrow about God, the soul, and things, and eventually what we want to do is get to make statements about love, truth, humility, faith, principles, in other words, but we probably won't get there tomorrow. But we'd like to make these statements so that they're being heard.
Could you start with that, maybe?
Sorry?
Could you start with that?
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start with that tomorrow. And then later in the day tomorrow, we'd like to talk to some spirits about the false beliefs that they have about those things that we raise.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we want to talk about some false beliefs about God, for example, and then maybe what we'll do is channel a spirit who's got false beliefs about God and talk about how it's affected their life now and in the spirit world. So that you can see the relationship between how beliefs matter with regard to your beliefs about God. And then, if we get time after that, I would like to do the same with the human soul, like false beliefs about the human soul. And then we talk to a spirit who has false beliefs about the human soul, and we ask them questions about, well, what happened to you when you passed, and how did this belief affect you? Now, in some cases, it might be ones who have changed those beliefs now, or in other cases, it might be ones that have not yet changed the belief, and we need to have a further discussion with them. But either way, it'd be good if we could incorporate tomorrow's discussion and invite them to have some participation, so that we're helping not just you here, because there's spirits here too. So our goal tomorrow will be to start off with false beliefs about God, and we'll just make a few lines of statements, probably one board full of statements about that, and we'll address any of your direct questions about it. Power fluctuations in the States are quite unusual. We have them at home all the time. So we can do that, have that discussion. And the beauty of having that discussion is the spirits that are here and yourselves can't unhear what we've said. And that's a good thing for your future investigation. Make sense? And it also means that anybody who listens to this video won't be able to unhear it either. So good luck with that, guys, if you're listening.
Sounds brilliant. Now, before everyone goes, if you arrived late, I'm wondering if you would see, Si, do you still have that check-in list? Yep. Just get your name checked off so that we know that you're here.
Yeah.
Because if you were going to come this weekend and you haven't shown up, then we're going to cancel you out of the next 2 weekends, because we figure those people are probably going to cancel out, because I want to make space, and I also want to open it up to any of you who want to come to one or both. It's going to be fine if you want to come to both of the next 2 weekends, as long as we
As long as we can fit everybody.
As long as we fit everybody.
We have a capacity there of 60.
We do.
Thereabouts, 60.
But I've had some cancellations, and also given that people didn't show up, so I'll take their names out. But just make sure you see side, get your name checked off. Otherwise, if you were planning to come, I'll get you.
It's actually with Kimberly.
Oh, it's with Kimberly. Kimberly, can you put up your hand?
Kimberly, hand right up.
Yes, you've got it.
Yeah. So stand up, Kimberly, so people can know you. Sorry about this.
So if you came late.
So you see Kimberly.
See Kimberly.
Cross your name off.
Yes.
And that way we know you're here.
Yes. And if you do want to register for one or both of the following weekends, you do that via our event page. And if it shows that you're on a waiting list, just join the waiting list, because I might have to manage some cancellation and open tickets and all of that sort of thing. If you do want to come, put your name there. I can't guarantee it, but it does look good for you. That's all I'm saying.
So you're okay with us going to multiple?
I'm okay now with you coming to more than one. Yes. So if it's what you want to do. Yeah.
I just have a question about donations. Do you
yes.
prefer a check or on the website?
Yeah.
So So we can't accept any foreign checks because our home bank doesn't accept foreign checks anymore. So donate.divinetruth.com is if you want to do it
You can do
via
it credit
transfer-wise,
card,
credit
transfer
card.
wise, bank, whatever.
Yep.
We have a US bank account, so you can transfer to a US bank account. And up the back red box, as you walk out the door. So if you want to give us some cash, that's where it will go. And we generally share our cash a bit with people who have helped us, and particularly like ones like Michael and stuff where we want to pay for the speakers and other things. And so that's where that will go.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Thank you very much for your donations.
Thank you. So we'll see you good people tomorrow, yes?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.